There you go.
Great. All right, good evening. It is 6:35 on Thursday, May 11th. This is the Conservation Commission meeting. I would like to call the meeting to order and begin with attendance. Roll call. Annie, Sylvia, are you here? Yes.
Here, present.
Susan Switzer,
Present.
Linda Andros,
Present.
Christopher Schipper, present, absent, and with notice, John Fusick. First order of business, I'd like a motion to approve the minutes of March 9th and April 13th.
I move that we approve the minutes of March 9th and April 13th.
I'll second. Any discussion? All in favor of approval? Aye, thank you. Let's move forward. The agenda item number, it says number 3, but it's number 2. I received a note from Robin Bates Mason, who's managing our sustainable efforts. She's not available to attend. There are lots of small items of progress underway. And we feel like there's progress being made in some of the areas of equity, which is one of the biggest challenges we have. Hopefully there'll be more progress in the field of recycling. And the good news is the swap shop itself is going well and keeping things out of the waste stream and generating a lot of attention. And I believe that a project for the Cam Hutchins Pollinator Garden in Bristow is being launched with Sustainable Connecticut funding, so that there will be a joint effort with the Land Trust and Planet New Canaan with support from Copia to plant in kind of an instructional pollinator pathway garden, so that it would be a garden with, I think, something like 8 to 12 beds of different types of pollinator plants that can be used in properties in and around New Canaan. I don't have anything else to add to that discussion. I don't know if you have any other questions here, commissioners.
She mentioned a couple of other things about the recycling and you know, in your correspondence, maybe we just forward that to Susan.
Okay. I can send that.
Yes, send
That's a good point. We'll forward the sustainable CT update
Yeah.
to you. I'll make a note. And I should forward it to Annie and John as well.
Yes.
Everybody can see what's there. I did receive a message from Tiger Man. He wouldn't be able to join us this evening. I had posed one question to him regarding the planning for the sidewalk and pull-off on Old Stamford Road. And he said, it looks like it's on track. They're responding to some questions from CT Dot regarding the permeability of the pull-off area. We want it to be permeable, not paved. And so they're working through what the details of that would be. I know that there has been one meeting, but no final plans yet for the final phase 4 work to be done in Bristow Park. But I'm hopefully that in June, we will see a draft of that from Keith Simpson Associates, so that we'll say, here are the next things that we're going to do to complete the work in the park. I did receive a report, and I should share that. It just came in today on progress with solar and the benefits that are being achieved.
Yeah, the metrics and
The metrics and all.
were
So-
quite impressive.
Right? And that's really the important thing to do, which is there's always this tremendous effort to get it installed. But then there's not the regular reporting on, look at the benefits of these investments in terms of, power saving, but also environmental impact of having more solar. And I did note that whereas Tiger had done some work on the DPW buildings that they control, it did not include all the school buildings. And I think that we should look at the combined effect of all that and kind of say this is good progress and share that with the general public.
Definitely.
To encourage more people to look at and possibly evaluate solar options for their properties.
I think it's a good evening, they can count it.
I know. Well, it took a little while to kind of get it.
It takes a while to get it up and running and accumulating, and you almost need like a year to get a feel for it. But it's voltage, right? It goes through a meter, so it's being
But
measured.
to calculate the carbon footprints.
Oh, yes.
Oh, my God. I know it's not just here, obviously, have introduced a proposal as part of, I think, the Biden administration to reduce the coal and gas operating energy plants. And that they can calculate all that stuff to me, it's just,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, the whole carbon side of this has had tremendous.
oh, it's huge.
So
So,
it would be good to put those in the minutes too, to put Tigers,
put Tiger's report, add that on
yeah.
and put that into the website. I
Yeah.
think those are two good ones to add. Got it. I think Tigers was sent to everybody on the commission.
I saw that,
You
I
got
think
it.
so.
Okay, so that's.
but it should be on the website.
Yeah,
Actually, there should be a press thing on it.
absolutely.
There should be
But
something.
we'll wait
Not a
until,
bad idea to have a press
Yeah.
report
Yeah.
or work something up for the press
Just so
we'll
we,
wait until we get everything together.
to get the schools and the town buildings
Yeah.
together and say,
if you don't have the schools,
Right.
to me, it's impressive that, number one, they've calculated this, we have a track record here. It's very demonstrable that this is a cash savings, but it's also an environmental savings.
agreed. Well, we'll give that feedback to Tiger. See whether we can't work something out. Any other points on that topic? Because I thought we would spend a moment to talk about a proposed stewardship agreement between the town of New Canaan and the New Canaan Land Conservation Trust. With regards to Bristol Park. And I think that the proposal, this is just for our discussion, the proposal was prepared by the Land Trust Executive Director and Governance Committee and reviewed by the governance. And it incorporated language that is in place already for the Whately Park Conservancy and for the Urban Park Garden Club agreements. So it's structured there and basically, you know, the first, you know, points A to I are simply recitals of facts or statements and then the agreements are written in kind of broader terms of what the relationship is like, what the relationship is meant to be, and it's meant to be an advocacy and a working together type of relationship. It doesn't absolve the town from its ownership or change any of that or the deed or whatever. It just simply gives a group a chance to become advocates and caretakers in a way of that property. The town would likely to agree to all to the points of some of the hardscape maintenance of the property. And the town retains ownership and will budget a certain amount every year for park maintenance, which is a step forward, because normally it's just a global and you get what you get. Whereas now there will be a dedicated line item to say this is what you have for maintenance. And whether if someone said you have a landscape, your landscaper or your land care guy will do your property 17 acres for $12,000, you'd say, I do that.
Yeah.
Pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But because it's, you know, woodlands and what have you, I think that kind of money will allow it to be kept clean and certainly, you know, touched up every so often in certain areas.
It's not a lot of money.
It's not, and I think that could certainly be reviewed, but it's a start. It's a start.
I mean, I think it's unreasonable to think that you could do, and I'm not thinking about the woodlands, I'm thinking about the repairs to walkways, hardscape. And there's nothing.
Right, I mean, most of the repair work would be graveling or putting that stone dust down.
Repairing things that got broken.
also possible like a bridge and what have you.
Mhm.
So I think that
So-
that's there. I think that there's going to be, extraordinary event coverage, and then there's the ongoing regular event.
So, I have to really study this a little more, but the land trust is not financially responsible in any way for it.
Not so, no. There wouldn't be financially responsible, although the land trust would raise money for things like birding activities or birdhouses or bird food,
Right,
some of the softer things, or if they wanted to plant more pollinators, they could do things like that.
so those kinds of things that then would just go through their board.
Those things would have to be discussed, and I
Yeah.
think that's one of the mechanisms would be, and I think that's where the town has yet to fully review the document.
Mhm.
But the mechanism maybe say that the town, that the land trust keeps the conservation commission informed of the programs. And as you know, at the moment, I am ex officio
Right.
on the board, so whoever is chair of the conservation commission ends up being ex officio on the land trust board.
Oh,
So that
that's-
linkage
that-
continues,
Yeah,
that linkage continues.
that.
I
key.
just think in the, under that I, that the Friends of Bristol Park have a fairly specific areas of responsibility, and the town does not. So I guess I would flesh that out a little bit more, that you're responsible for the maintenance of the trail system.
Oh, you're saying, yeah, where the town's reciprocal commitments,
Right, in conjunction with this agreement, the Friends of Bristol Park will transfer an endowment of 150,000 drawn down 5% annually, blah, blah, for the following. And I just think that yes, that under ownership, that the town needs to have itself a little more specificity to what exactly it is that they're obligated to do.
right, when it's written is, there are two things. One is, under the reciprocal, there is, at the beginning of every year, the land trust and a dedicated parks department representative will jointly prepare an annual Bristol Park assessment review as guidance for the upcoming budget cycle. So there is that requirement, but also under ownership, the town has and shall retain full and exclusive ownership
Right.
of all the land and improvements within the sanctuary. And the town recognizes the need to maintain Bristol Park to a high standard leading up to the 2024 centennial celebration, and therefore commits a dedicated. Now that is timing specific, but I think there's a question of, you're right, there should be a continuity clause here in
Right.
terms of the maintenance role.
And I wouldn't necessarily feel it necessary to have a budget number,
Mhm.
because I find that's actually confusing. But they have these responsibilities to undertake these land improvements and or maintenance. General park maintenance, whatever you want to call it, for whatever it costs, and take that $12,000 out of there.
Well, I think that's I think that it's almost a given that they have that responsibility, but this is the incremental land care responsibility, more of things like a small amount of tree work or things like that. You could get somebody in there. But if we want to make that point about.
I just think that, because to me, reading this as
Mhm.
just a person,
Mm,
I would say that's it for them, that's just very.
I hear that, that's fair. I would say that, no park has a dedicated budget.
No, I understand that, and they get wrapped into the.
It gets
general
wrapped into
park,
the
yeah.
total, so.
And
so
that's
this
why I
is-
think maybe outlining more specifically the areas of responsibility, you can add tree care wherever you want. But I don't think a number is very useful in this particular document. I mean, this document is gonna have a lifetime and it's gonna
Sure.
well exceed $12,000.
Right, yeah, the question, does it inflate? Is it a single number? Does it go away after 1 year? You make good points. Okay, I
But,
think,
but isn't that just from the endowment from the Friends?
no,
No, it's quite separate.
it's separate. The endowment transferred by the
Oh, I
Friends of
see.
Bristow.
Of a minimum of 12,000 though, so, I mean, I know, for running the nature center,
Right,
You know, it was always, every year, it was just a negotiation of what needed to be done and what the town could actually provide.
Yeah. And I think that's the objective
I
of
would
the
agree with you. but I
assessment.
think That's the reason why not have a fixed dollar number, because you have no idea how much that money is gonna be any given.
Yeah,
Well, I guess,
but that's just, it just says minimum, it doesn't say.
I think I think it's probably worthwhile to, and I take your point about it's better to leave it open, because the difficulty with leaving it open is it's.
Yeah.
So the desire is to say if we make it a minimum of, but and more as required, there might be language that could work.
Yeah, they're probably.
I don't know whether they would default to the minimum or not. I think it's meant to be somewhat more positively intentioned, but it's a good point. And I think we can work on the language there.
Well, I think the agreements that are not specified to a particular timeline and to a particular, and that number is gonna say, oh, okay, well, that's no problem. We owe them $12,000 a year. I just don't think that's the intention of what this is supposed to be.
No, the intention is to make sure that the town itself is putting money in.
Yes,
But then how do you, when you say the intention is the town puts money in, do you put in no number or do you put in
no, I think
a as needed?
you put in an outline of where you think the areas of interest would be. You mentioned one, trees, trails,
Yeah,
bridges, structures. Whether we had environmental issues,
possibly.
the way you did already. So I think that you have those, it's clear here to me that the Friends of Bristow Park are gonna take care of the birds and educational programs. And that the town really has the rest. And that's a park that requires those kinds of, I don't know what they have in their language with, well, they don't have agreements with their parks because they own them all, but they own this one too.
There's a for the nature center, there was a 1950 letter. And there hasn't been any other document other than deeding, quit claim deeds of property to the town, that where money was raised.
That's.
So it was just, the town is responsible for taking care of their parks.
It's written into the deed that the
right.
town is responsible to maintain the park as a bird and wildwood preserve.
Right.
And I would say all of the improvements that have been installed therein. I mean, I don't know, all the language that you have a lawyer to be better at this. And probably the Parks Department would have better language as well. I just think this number is a problem.
Okay. I'm happy to take any language suggestions you want to add to it.
I don't do that.
And I also think that, this is our first review. It'll be run through with the town and the Parks Department, and they'll come back, and I think we'll make the point of, we have a specific number, but how do we know how it's going to specifically be done? I guess I would point to the January 15th assessment review as guidance for upcoming budget cycles as a start,
Okay,
and then see how we develop from there.
Quick question,
Yeah.
follow up on the money. One of the things that I've always felt is sort of missing from Bristow is just town awareness and there are all sorts of things that could address that, from signage to programming, educational stuff, just telling the story, getting the story out there. And all of that, especially as it pertains to the 2024 centennial celebration, there's going to be a cost associated with getting the word out, telling the story of Bristow, and increasing the number of people who use this park. My impression is that most of New Canaan doesn't really know about this park. And so I wonder who is going to pay for this celebration, the preparation for the celebration, the messaging, and signage and whatever programming you have in mind.
Right now, the party that's going to cover that is the Friends of Bristow.
that's what I understood from this agreement. that
The
they
Friends
would
of
be
Bristow
Covering this.
are going to be covering the costs of things like the September 8th event, which will have a speaker, which will have a publication on the history of Bristow Park and a program, which will have a musical performance, which will have talks by a birder as well as a local birder. It will also have a unveiling of the Francis of Assisi statue that's being put in. And to your point about awareness, I believe that the land trust would also play a role as steward in enhancing the awareness, particularly among its membership, which are active park goers and visitors to Nature Center or all the organizations. So I do think that some of that will be there as well. And
Yeah, the Land Trust has a good list of followers and newsletter and all the other green organizations
Right.
to
right.
help to promote.
It's interesting that, you know, the Conservation Commission doesn't have a list of anything, of any type we have. You know, so we revert to publishing these items here. I meant to give you some of these as well. This is what you asked for. I think that the land trust is set up to do it with databases and everything like that. I don't think, you know, it's the same as the Parks and Rec department doesn't really run communication programs about the different parks. Waverly Park Conservancy does it, Irwin Park Garden Club does it. Kiwanis Park kind of has its own programming. Getting the word out will be part of the challenge and getting the park ready for the event. But the idea is, the thinking is to get the park to a certain position for its 100th anniversary and then use that point to get funding, hundreds of thousands of dollars of funding into park improvement. The question is, once you get there, how do you make sure you maintain it and then continue working on improvements? That's the challenge. I see.
Is there any kind of reveal planned for the celebration? Like a new feature or addition that would be like a dedication?
Yeah,
ribbon cutting?
there's going to be the phase 4 plan, as I understand it, will include commemoration plaques and things like that, things that celebrate the history of the park, the people who have been involved in its founding and development. Obviously, the pavilion that's there is one new item, but it will be in use by then. It's already up and running.
The St. Francis.
The Francis will be revealed in that the restoration of the Francis statue will be revealed. It's hard, you know, there is a group called that's organized with Sarah Herring and it has several buried in town supporters called the Bristow Park 2024 Centennial Committee. And they are working on a game plan of what should happen in the preceding period and what should be happening at the event itself, including, a writer has been commissioned to write the history of the park and have a booklet produced. A musical performance has been written specifically for the park. So there are some pretty cool things in play. I think it's a good point to suggest that maybe not in June or maybe July or August, we invite the Bristow Park Centennial Committee to come in and talk about ideas and plans for how the event might shape up. It's September 8th. Well, we know it's September 8th, 2024 at 2 p.m. Put it in your diary. Put it in your diary.
So, one of our meetings, we were talking about an Instagram account for, the Conservation Commission. And I think, were you supposed to follow up with Tiger or follow up with someone about getting one? I can't remember.
That was our first meeting and
Right.
I mentioned that we should have an Instagram account.
Right.
And if we're talking about the same discussion, there was some talk about the land trust, because they've got this system for interns,
Right.
And they do a pretty good job with their communications on Instagram.
But,
Um,
yeah, the Conservation Commission could have an
Absolutely.
Instagram account.
yeah,
Yeah.
And
We should
because it
expect
wouldn't just talk about Bristol, it could talk
No.
about solar, it could talk about sustainable
Anything.
Connecticut.
yeah, we do.
There's, yeah.
There's plenty of room for it. So the question is, who would manage it? And, I guess we would have to get DPW, and we both look over here. We could get, DPW has an Instagram
Yes,
account.
they do.
We could talk to Chris, who manages the IT function, to say, if could the Conservation Commission have an Instagram account that we could then share and
Yeah.
friend to other organizations,
As I
and then
recall,
find out
this is
what restrictions there are on a public entity having an Instagram.
From the town,
From the town.
if what restrictions.
So I
the town
think it's
has
good,
for
I think
us
it's
to-
a great way to research it, and I think it would be more effective or more fun than what we're trying, even though we've improved our website, people have to come to it to see things, but we can take those points and share them
Yeah, people are on Instagram more than they were ever,
more than they should be.
more than they would ever be drawn to our website.
I think the New Canaan Police Department really does an excellent job
Oh.
with their Instagram
Mhm.
account. And the question, one of the responses that I got when I brought this up was, well, you're speaking for the town whenever you post something, so what is the sort of protocol for
Yeah.
getting approvals for
Exactly.
anything you post? And that often brings an Instagram effort to a screeching halt.
Right, well, the approval would be the Conservation Commission approves this message.
Yeah, I mean, I assume that once something gets into.
Oh, I'm sure they'll
into the
set down
minutes.
certain standards of things that are not
Yeah, we
appropriate.
don't want to have any foul language.
Or attributions that you have no right to make, so to speak.
Mhm.
Well, I think Andy makes the point, which is the more restrictive it is, the less likely it is to happen. So the question is, should we just do it?
Well, what does DPW do in the police department? They're under the same
Yeah.
protocol.
They probably are, and they probably say we have a wide latitude in the
Yeah.
program.
Right, well, all that's fine. I just think we need to have a better.
Well, then that's what
Better
we have to research. Would you like to pursue that? Ann?
Sure, I can,
We can start with Tiger, and he'll direct you to whoever
Or
would
the
be the
police
person to do
department,
it.
like.
I'll contact the police and Tiger and I'll see what they're doing and what the protocols are
Yeah.
for posting.
And they may say, well, we just use our good judgment.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Oh, I don't think that's what the attorneys have told.
No, but I think that would be,
every organization is having this exact conversation. I've had this in newsrooms and it's a roiling debate in newsrooms. Whether needs to get the top editor's review of every Instagram post, and no, of course not. That wouldn't be able to function that way. So, some general guidelines, and they'll let us know if we stray outside.
right, and we could write, these are the types of messages we were gonna share. And it could be, we'd like, we may highlight different environmental organizations in town, the Garden Club or Planet Buchanan or Beautification League or Land Trust or Waveney or Nature Center or what have you. But we might be highlighting them, or we might be highlighting things that the town is doing, or we might highlight things about water and what's happening in that regard, or gas powered leaf blowers. I think that we have a pretty good remit.
yeah.
I
I mean, actually, if you look at,
and if you-
our website, it's just taking our website and sort of repositioning, reformatting it and highlighting what's important, and putting it on Instagram.
Sure, although I
And
think,
then from the minutes too, like.
yeah, I think that the latter,
Right,
making it more of a live, update. Here's what we're talking about.
right,
The commission.
Yeah.
right,
And again, we have our charter, it lays out what
Right.
we are responsible for and what we look at, and we could highlight.
but
how
the
much
bird
of space
pictures
is
that
left,
you have.
or bird
Yeah.
photographs, things like
Yeah.
that. Now, I suspect that, with regards to Bristol, that the land trust will start to do that, highlighting Bristol Park,
Right.
like it highlights its other things, we're doing walks in there or what have you. But I think our remit is, be a little
It's
more
more-
encompassing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it'd be a fun effort.
Yeah, we could even highlight, this many tons went through the transfer station. It's a tremendous amount of waste. What can we do? How do we manage that more successfully? So. Could also be involved in tree planting. could be highlighting messages from the plan of conservation and development. So I think that there's a deep area to pull from and put out in shorter form and more
Yeah,
direct, and then
right.
every form could link to something else, of course, but it'd be kind of fun to have it, to have our messaging and increase our, our engagement with the town.
Yeah,
And,
one of the ideas that I pitched was video as well.
yeah,
Not of me, but maybe of
Sure.
the
we could
commissioner.
walking through
Yes.
a park and highlighting a couple of the features. And then
Yeah.
we put that up, and
Look
then,
what's blooming kind of thing.
and ideally, people will share it. And then, word gets out that way. And the truth is, it's, our word is gonna get out, one person telling another person. In conversations, and have you been in there, did you see this or that? So, I love the idea. Be great. So let's see what we can come up with. We can come up with some ideas, and we'll talk about it next week.
Sure,
Put that on the to-do. All right.
next week. Did you say next week? Or you said we'll talk about it next week,
No,
next
next
month,
meeting.
next meeting, okay.
Anything else regarding the agreement other than this is the first draft and has yet to be reviewed itself by the town legal and parks and DPW? But this is the direction that I'm looking at for sustainability.
And so basically, we just put in the minutes that we reviewed it, and then we will continue to review after.
Right, after it's gone through
After
the
it's gone through the.
And we can, Susan, you can add any wordage with the specifics of items that of concern, followed by much discussion ensued. I'll speak with John regarding the wildlife cams. I didn't get a note back on that, but I should let you know that as a result of the vandalism, there are now 2 cameras at each entrance, or a camera at each entrance. So,
So we can,
it's possible, not we, it's actually organized by the town,
yeah, right,
so that there is an ability to dial back and evaluate, but there's no live monitoring. It's just simply a recording
right.
of what's
Right.
happening.
Right.
And on the vandalism side, there's not much to report other than, my understanding was that there were 5 tips given of who the vandals might have been or may have been, and that Officer Kelly Coughlin is following up with those. And since that, there's been no other activity, no other vandalism in the park. So I suspect it was very few individuals in having been warned off. We'll see whether it goes any further.
Yeah.
It seems to be in hand for the moment until the next cycle comes through and then the next event.
Yeah,
So your point is a good one, though. Here's an example of vandalism, who is going to be responsible for addressing. things like that.
Vandalism in parks is a standard operational issue.
Yeah, right. So it's a good point. It's a very good point.
I mean, it just happens and you can't predict everything, but it's the faster you fix it, the less frequently it occurs.
Right, agreed. It's the broken windows concept, right? If you leave the windows broken, more get broken.
I have a question about this. I have a middle school. Sorry. I have a middle school student who's just at the very beginnings of having some freedom to roam the town with her friends on bikes. And what she tells me, Bristol Park is one of their main stops. Saks Middle School students. And so first, I wonder if we should talk to Principal Guttich about middle school. I don't know whether they talk to the students about vandalism at all. And there's a greater thing where Saks kids come downtown and they're all over. Yeah, you've probably
Yeah.
seen packages.
I don't know what they do now that Mackenzie's. Chicken Joe's.
They go to, I know where they go to the
gas station.
Gas station for slushies.
Yeah.
They-
Like there's bunches of them there all the time.
So I actually am not clear on whether bikes are allowed at Bristow, and so I wasn't sure whether to tell them they're not allowed to go there, or whether they are allowed to go there.
But bikes are allowed along the central path, in other words, to transit from one side to the other.
Is that clear?
It's not that clear. There is a sign saying no bikes on side trails. So if you're in there and you're riding through, you're fine, but if you're running your dirt bikes up and down the side trails, you're off track. I don't think I entirely anticipated what would happen when we did this, but I always felt that the park is meant to be a green link. And if that includes walkers, strollers, bikers, everything but motorized vehicles. So I'm thrilled that kids can get on their bike and ride around town, and I wish the town is safer
Yes.
for kids to get on their bike and ride around. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to say no to any of that. And I've always struggled with parks that start with a sign of welcome, no, 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 no.
I agree with you. I think it's most of
It's more of, let's enjoy and be responsible.
Yeah.
And we'll deal with the issues as they arise, as opposed to assume 100% of the people do it. Just deal with the 1% or whatever that do the things that are probably not appropriate.
Are there opportunities with middle schoolers, for example, to talk about to the students, not necessarily the principal, I have the he can't be controlling everything or she, about the protocols of public open space? If you destroy it, it's gone.
Well, yeah, they actually have a field trip coming up next week to Waveney. And they're really excited about that.
Yeah.
And a lot of them grew up running those fields and really value that open space. I don't think they have someone, the guest speaker, come talk about open space, but
I think just sort of it would probably be a similar message for everyone who, every year when there's new group of students, but just general protocols, you don't litter, you don't ride your bikes in any kind of it's transportation, is not just, the trails are vulnerable to this sort of activity. And therefore you need to be considerate about the plant materials, I mean, all of it.
I don't know, and all I can tell you is that this group, they're really excited about this Bristow Park. It's a meeting spot for them, the middle schoolers on bikes, and they have newfound freedom. And there's this cool hidden park where they meet each other by the train tracks, and it has an allure.
It has been that way for 100 years. It just took a brave person 20 years ago to want to do it. Today it's become more accessible.
Yeah.
But the management of that is not to say no, it's to have other people there. Whereas it's other visitors in the park, adults and what have you. And that's the management, which is, it's not just a kids park, everybody goes there.
Yeah.
So along with kids on bikes or people with dogs. And if you're walking a dog and a kid comes flying by you on a bike, you say, hey, slow down. You're upsetting my dog. Kids get the message.
Yeah,
And to your point exactly, it is the hope, and it was the reason why we wanted to have this pull off big enough for 4 cars for a school bus,
yeah,
so that we could host park visits by students and explain to them these kind of messages and show them.
yeah.
And it's the other reason why I think the Land Trust is a great organization, because they have a 15-member board, an executive director, a communications director, they have volunteers to potentially do those kind of programs, just like the Nature Center is set up to have
Mhm.
this effective well. So,
You might be able to reach them with some clever, what if you put in a little bike rack and a little seat and a sign addressed to them, not no, but welcome, here's why we love, here's what you can do here.
yeah, well, you can say that the pavilion that's now in the center is not a bad meeting spot, it's just very visible to anybody in the park. So the desire may be to go further up in the hill or elsewhere if you have a little quiet chat. But even that is sanctuary. So now I've had people come and tell me, I love that railroad look at it. It's very quiet and peaceful, and I can smoke a cigar there if I want. I can sit and watch birds. They're just gonna, like everything, kids are there, and then an adult walks up, and then the attitude changes, and
Yeah.
it adjusts. And in a way, it takes a village, right? And you need a lot of people, more people walking through there improves the park. It's just more eyes on it.
We also, at the meeting that you were away for, there was some discussion of cameras. That was right after the vandalism. I don't know if that had any traction.
Yeah, there's now cameras.
Oh,
there are
quite,
There are,
there's
there's
quite
cameras
Oh,
at
okay,
both
sorry, I
ends.
missed that.
at the beginning of.
Oh, right.
So that's another warning, if things get out of hand, the cameras are gonna be pretty precise. As to who, there's only two entrances, so if you came in one way and went out the other, and in that period, there were issues.
Oh, that'll solve the problem, cameras.
No. Thank you for the support on that. Well, and let's just say it's a little bit like having an ADT sign on your front lawn,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Whether you had the system or on, or
Right.
switched on or not. Anything else, any other discussion points on Bristow? No? Good, all right. Thank you all for the nature and environment meeting at the library. I thought that was kind of a pretty healthy discussion. It's the first time we've gotten all these different groups, conservation-minded groups together.
I thought it was great.
I love that meeting.
Yeah.
It felt like we could have talked for 4 hours.
Yeah.
Right, it could have gone on, but it was fun,
Something that should have happened like years ago.
right?
Yeah.
And we always thought it would be if there was a venue, and now we finally found something that could work. There was a summary note sent out. And I think they're going to try to invite one of the members of the Planning and Zoning POCD subcommittee to join in. And,
Dan Radman, right? So they
well, Radman is chair,
Yeah,
and he's an alternate on the subcommittee, but there's, I think it's John Chris and Krista Nielsen and Chris Herring and Kent Hunt. There's a subcommittee that's responsible for the RFP and the guidance and selection of the consultant who's going to work on the POCD. And because I happened to have a free evening yesterday, I sat in on their subcommittee meeting. And the good news is that the people who do the plan are going to meet with community groups, different groups of the community. And so I mentioned that there is this group that would like to be met with and represented in the plan. So this initiation here is a great start. So I think that we're going to find a way to have a bigger influence in the POCD. And what I'm really hoping for is that the influence is just a little more data driven than what we currently have. Is we need to plant more trees.
Yeah.
It needs to be more specific. It
Yeah,
needs to be,
yeah.
Buchanan has an estimated 13,000 mature trees, size 48 inches or bigger, that are the key to sustaining our biodiversity. We take down approximately 700 trees a year. Basically, look at that. What's the replenishment rate that we need to look at? Data.
Yeah.
Data like why solar is so beneficial, with examples. The strategic element tends to be qualitative, but lacks the quantitative basis that would lead to implementation, which is what Susan, that was your point, is the plan is great, but it's the implementation.
Right.
That's crucial, and without the data-driven information, which says there is only 612 unprotected, undeveloped acres left in New Canaan. So you decide if you want to protect any more or not, but this is what there is. There has to be data on trees, there has to be data on waste streams, there has to be data on how many households have solar or geothermal. What information do we have? If you put up solar, do you need a building permit? If there's a building permit, there must be a database, right? If you put in geo, do you need a permit? There must be data. And even if it's not perfect, it begins to show that we're looking at it. So this is the consultant in me who believes believes in data-driven analysis as a bulwark to qualitative, increase sustainability, improve trails.
Yeah,
We have this many trails, we have 18 miles of further trails we'd like to develop. Trails cost X dollars per mile. Where are we thinking about budgeting and supporting these things? The trick is always to put wood behind, the idea, put something behind it. So that's where I would like to push on the plan of conservation, and as well as all the ideas we brought up of the importance of dark skies, or the importance of, noise, gas powered leaf blowers, or funding open space or trees. These are all great things. And then there's the plan, New Canaan ideas on recycling, and there's a lot there. And I think we can bulk this up and make it a more balanced plan of conservation and development to succeed. So
What's the timeline for?
the timeline is that they're going to hopefully have contracted with the organization that will assist, the consultants really, who will assist by July 1st, right? And then the deliverable is by the end of next year.
Yeah, but there's a lot of process.
There's a lot of process, a lot of interviewing, but you need that in order to collect data to get to do that. And planning and zoning is not a massively staffed operation, so
No.
we're going to need to figure out how to. That's why they bring the consultants in, and the consultants are, in some ways experts in things like GIS, so they can parse the map every different way. They talk about waterways. Water is a big topic, it should be a big topic for us. So I'm excited. And I hope that the next scheduled meeting, Mika and the library get one of the POCD subcommittee members to attend and discuss their thoughts as to how the plan will evolve, what the process is going to be like. It may not happen by the end of May, but it will happen by the end of June, because they will have then signed up, and they will say who is going to be our consultant.
When is the next meeting? They did set a date.
yeah, they did, and I didn't write it down.
I didn't either.
May 30th,
May 30th.
I believe, is at the bottom of the memo from Mika. Is
Was
it
that summary sent around?
Mickey,
Mickey, yeah, pardon?
Was that sent around? I didn't get it.
I didn't get it either.
I didn't either. There was some minutes,
Yeah.
that went around. No, I didn't get any.
We didn't get them.
I need to check that out.
So Mickey should have the email address of everyone who attended.
Yeah, she had the fun in it.
Yeah,
And now I'm seeing the original meeting was just forwarded to us by you. You
Yeah.
were on the list,
yeah,
and then you forwarded it to us.
Got it.
right.
Okay, because I thought I saw it went out, but I didn't
Well, we
read the
provided our
distribution.
contact
Didn't-
information at the meeting.
Yeah,
But we haven't been.
Yeah, we are not
Follow
putting
ups.
down the follow-up.
So Michaela Porta
Yeah.
is the original.
Yeah, Mickey. That would be good.
Well, I won't find it on my phone, obviously, it can't be,
Okay.
what is it, can't be the documents.
I'll forward it to you.
All right, I will forward the,
Okay.
I've got that on the next thing, which is the,
Or I could just reach out to Mickey and ask her to add our email.
yeah.
One
And
of us.
I thought, I didn't notice that they were there, so we'll follow up.
I think she used her original distribution list. I don't think she
Didn't add in the new names.
No.
Okay, will do. But I was excited by having that conversation. It was
Oh,
great.
absolutely.
Tiger was there and he was happy to participate,
absolutely.
as was
So-
Leo.
Who else should be included in those meetings?
Good question. Who are we missing? I mean, we didn't have a representative from the Wayne Park Conservancy, but that's just time waste. But Bill Flynn Nature Center was there,
Right.
Garden Club was there, Beautification League was there,
Yeah.
Planet Canaan was there.
Right.
Yeah,
We had Trout Unlimited there, the
the
Conservation
farmer's
Commission.
market could probably be their next
Pardon?
one, farmer's market.
Farmers market, yeah, it's an interesting question. Should we, farmers market? Yeah, why not?
Lexi,
Yeah, Lexi, is she still running it? Lexi,
that's, yeah, I believe so.
Put that one on hold before we jump into
Yeah.
that discussion, but, I'm trying to think who else would make sense to participate in that discussion, other groups, I mean, I originally thought that the venue, the organizing group would be the League of Women Voters, because I thought they were.
Yeah, that's what our,
But it turned out that they felt that they were more politicized,
I put this together at one point.
right?
I mean, this was just, I was just trying to think of everyone that should be included, the gardeners, that's.
Yeah.
And then,
Mhm.
the library plan, elder care.
If you have some names or contacts there,
Yeah.
you want to try to let them know about this or give it to
The
people.
gardeners, yeah,
I don't know who, the gardeners is always a sub rosa kind of.
yes,
group.
and they also work with newcomers.
Right,
Parents associations, I talked to Margot about having somebody from the parents associations there,
Mhm.
because he was talking about the schools not being, you know.
right, be like PTO, PTA.
Yes, right, having somebody, and
Mhm.
she's going, because apparently they're being quite vocal about some things, so
Mhm.
she was going to reach out to them. I don't know about church groups, I don't know, I had that, I mean, church, for instance, in St. Mark's, they're really working very hard to make this Mayfair sustainable,
Mhm.
and they have. are
Right,
working
Plan
on
Buchanan is
plan
working with them.
on that. The League of Women Voters.
I'd be intrigued. Any additional groups would be welcome. I don't think that the meeting is meant to, but we want to make sure it stays in a nature and environment
Mhm.
camp.
Mhm.
If only because there will be a very strong educational camp.
Right,
There will be a strong, real estate broker or
Right.
commerce camp.
right,
What we're trying to do is, and again, for fairness, we're trying to balance up or bring up and say, look, the combined membership of all these groups here represents something like 7,000 or 4,000 households.
right, Right.
That's a lot of voting
yeah,
and presence.
right,
So, for instance, the community foundation, but their remit is so large.
Yeah.
It's just something that they would specifically zone in on, and
yeah,
it may or may not be the case. I think they also intend to try to stay out of anything that could even be perceived as political.
right, right.
But that said, if there are some additions, we can certainly get to Nikki and say we'd like to add these in, and I know that Lisa would be delighted, the bigger the meeting, the more.
So what about really, concerned citizens that are advocates?
That's gonna be a little trickier.
I know. that's-
If only, and again, I think that what we can do is if there are, and we're seeing this now, there's like 6 different people who have written specifically about gas powered leaf blowers.
Right,
That could be a particular group, that could be a particular topic. Now, whether we act to represent their interests or whether they have a chance to make their points made, we should find a way to see that they get into this process.
mhm, mhm.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Good. All right. Any other points regarding that and the P O C D? All right. I should also mention to you that, I did present, because I wasn't doing anything on Tuesday night. I presented to the Board of Finance on 2 topics. One topic was a potential disbursement from the land acquisition fund
right,
to support the proposed acquisition that the land trust is doing of a property adjoining the Brown property. And then the second discussion I presented to them was the need to come up with a more stable financing mechanism to put funds into the land acquisition fund. And I highlighted that in a town where developable lots go for $1 million,
mhm,
the town has managed in the course of 5 years to accumulate a total of $150,000. And I said,
that's not enough.
it's not enough. And, obviously, the board members, some of them nodded their heads and some of them said, well, we don't know what you want to spend it on. So we want to, so there was a discussion and it was triggered by this, which is the land acquisition fund currently is sort of funded out of either operating revenues like the grand list, your real estate taxes. Or occasionally they say, well, we can bond for that, we'll borrow the money, put it into the land acquisition fund because we know it's gonna go into a long-term investment. And I made the argument that, simply as an individual, as a person, I tend to be very conservative. So that when my children were born, I began savings programs for college. I felt like I knew I would have to pay for college and probably graduate school. And therefore I put money away every year. To me, that's conservation. That's how you get yourself into a position for an event you know is going to come. And I said, now, if my children decided they didn't need to go to college, perhaps my grandchildren would decide, so the funds would build for them. And I said, I don't think the mechanism of bonding makes sense, to borrow money to hold for future. And I said, I don't really feel that the way the fund is set up, the land acquisition fund was set up and it was written so that it could be funded to a maximum of 1/2 mil per year, not to exceed 1/2 mil. Well, 1/2 mil in New Canaan, we're what, 18 or 19 mil right now, the mill rate would have been $5 million a year, which is, you know, a massive high ceiling.
Right.
So I made the argument to him, I said, look, I sold my house in 21 to downsize, to move. And then in my closing statement, there's $2.50 per thousand town of New Canaan real estate conveyance fee. And I said, so I just wrote a check, I pay taxes. I sold my house, I bought another house in town, and I wrote a check to the town of New Canaan for $3,250 or whatever it was. And it basically is 25 basis points of your total sales. I said, why is that? Why did I do that? Why do you take that money in? And I said, the legislative record for that was, Lowell Weicker said, we hope that towns will use this taxation to fund future open space purchases, because that way your children's children will have something preserved. And they also, well, you know, I said,
Well, hope isn't going to do it.
well, hope isn't good. So I said, you know, so I'm going to ask you to allocate 10 basis points of the 25 basis points to the land acquisition fund. And it was like, you know, because that would be that could be 800,000 a year or something like that. And I said, well, if you're going to be in the land acquisition business, you need to put money up.
What is the money used for currently?
General fund.
Yeah.
What is the money, what in the land
The land
acquisition fund?
conveyance, it's general.
Oh, the
fund.
land conveyance, it's a revenue line item.
It
It
goes
goes right into general fund.
General.
And I said, you know, it's unusual because this is a recurring, non-recurring revenue source. In other words, it recurs because there's a certain turnover in real estate. But it's not a recurring one because the real estate doesn't turn over every year. And I said, and it's volatile. It can be as much as 2 million or as little as 1 million, depending on the market and the
Right.
conditions. So it moves with the market. So it's generally always kind of conservatively budgeted. I said, it makes to me perfect sense to use this vehicle. And there were debates of, well, what if we charge an extra 5 basis points for the land? I said, why is this here? Why not just eliminate the tax and put it into the mill rate? If that's, anyway, it was not something that they wanted to hear, but there was a little, I kind of see where you're going, kind of step. And I said, look, it took me 10 years to get here to tell you this.
Well, I was trying to think about when, being on the commission, having somebody come in and present, I think it was you and I don't know, I can't remember who else, but they had a program and they compared it to Nantucket.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Nantucket is very active.
Yeah, and.
Well, they have a bigger problem.
Right, well, but, you know, there are other communities
Oh, yeah.
that do this, that care about it, and it
Nantucket.
seems to work for them, and,
The Nantucket program is different because it actually has a buyer conveyance fee
Ah.
of 2%, 3%.
oh,
This one is an exit tax almost. I said, well, I didn't exit. I said, and I would have been happy to give $1,225 to the land acquisition fund
Yeah.
from this conveyance fee, and you keep the other,
right,
you know, 2,000 or something like that.
right.
Anyway, it was food for thought for a moment. It's ambitious. They are very protective of the mill rate and taxation here in town, but it felt to me like maybe the door opened just a little bit.
So what would be the next step?
They're gonna talk about it. And then I've been asked to present the same idea to the Board of Selectmen and to the town council. So I'm moving there, and I gotta say, Ann helped me with some information, really good one was Fairfield. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Fairfield has a land acquisition fund, and it sucks in if a developer is developing property and he can't set aside open space, money goes in there. If they sell something, money goes in there. The interesting one is if there's a budget surplus, in other words, they budgeted so much revenue, so much cost, and it comes in a surplus position, 10% of the surplus goes into the land acquisition.
Wow.
So let's just say there are a lot of different mechanisms out there. But I think I basically just said it was sort of a chiding, it's like 5 years, $150,000, it's not cutting it.
No.
And somewhere along the line, the legislative body said, set up a land acquisition fund and fund it. And it stalls here in the Board of Finance. So the question is, where do we move this forward? How do we move this forward? Because I felt that it was the Board of Finance was the one that was restraining any activity. So we've opened the dialogue. I'm using all my goodwill right to try to get this done. And because I believe firmly in the future that eventually there will be additional water company lands
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, totally.
come out because the town needs to be in a position to negotiate. And then, you know, I said, look, nobody negotiates for real estate without having this, without having a you know, really serious thought about a down payment. You don't go in there empty handed and say, trust me, I'll go through 16 different meetings with town bodies. And I know I'll get the money. No one will wait that long.
Well,
So,
you need to be fast, that's the other
well,
problem.
that's the other.
I mean, there are grant funding opportunities, but you can't respond fast enough, or somebody else is gonna move in ahead of you.
Exactly. I said, you know, for every opportunity out there, there's 25 developers willing to counterbid you. And there's 50 real estate brokers willing to oversell, price up.
Yes.
So it's a challenge. Anyway, enough of me, I just wanted to keep you appraised of that. The budget hasn't changed. This is where we're at, and the 10,000 specifically for open space mapping is we get more of the GIS information on the table, like specific properties, specific information about, and then a hierarchy of why you would need to do that. And maybe if we're lucky, we can convert it into a value, in other words, a book value or something like that. And now, if you would like to have to discuss any new business or other ones, but we're at the witching hour.
The only quick thing I
Sure.
have is I would like to reach out to the person who runs the farmer's market
Mhm.
and just, you know, communicate the commission's desire to be helpful on, and just kind of learn what their goals are.
Got it.
Is that okay?
Particularly from a conservation standpoint, I was thinking about your comments about, you know, is that location ideal or not? You know, where they were, the center parking lot is gone, and that doesn't exist, so where else could you possibly hold it? And the advantage of it is it's a massive amount of parking spots.
Yeah, I like it there, much better than the other place. 'Cause that
It's,
was-
yeah, you have less traffic, if you can pull up, park and go on. It's probably is windy. I don't-
It's a wind tunnel, and they say it's hurt their business.
Oh, really?
I would say, I think that's a possibility. Anytime you move your business location,
Yeah,
there's an education cycle. You're gonna get set back. Because there were a group of regular visitors who walked to it. Who no longer can or find it as easy to walk to it. In the center of town, but then there's a whole other group that now say, hey, I find it much more accessible and I can park. Pick up my stuff and go. So they're gonna go through this site relocation disruption. But the wind factor, I'm not sure if it's constant, because they do have set up their little booths.
Yeah,
But yeah, they might need, you're right, it is definitely more open and requires more, requires heavier footings for their, you know, when they call those awnings, whatever it is that they put up. But please, and particularly if there's the environmental or conservation or organic aspects of this that we could support, and food waste aspect of it,
Mhm.
I think it'd be pretty useful. And Robin with Planet New Canaan also, I think, has a pretty strong relationship there too.
Yeah, and they're the food waste people were at, when,
Yeah.
at the Planet New Canaan booth when we were, passing out, and they were making the rounds.
Right.
So,
I gotta tell you, I picked up some really great hen in the woods, but
Oh,
for my boss,
the mushrooms
fantastic.
mushrooms are fabulous.
fantastic.
It's like a regular Saturday morning outing.
It's a pity that it's just Dudley and I, because I would love to do these bigger meals, but I froze it and then I reused it and reused a portion of it, so it worked really well. That's it. If there's any other points, any other business?
I was supposed to, draw up a memo about the dark skies effort. I'll bring that to the June meeting.
Please, yeah, I'm there, and it's not just, if I'm understanding it, dark skies is not just about astronomy. It's about insect life, bird life,
Yes.
Right.
and I think that I can bring an advocate in to support dark skies, which is a fellow named Bill McDonald, who has a fabulous firefly display on his property, and the adjoining land trust property has a fabulous firefly display. And two neighbors have enormous outdoor lighting systems that completely, if you have outdoor lighting on, lighting, fireflies don't make, they don't see the signal. There's a need to darken
Mhm.
or ask them to turn things down or tone down their lighting.
Yeah. Mhm.
Well, it's periodic, it doesn't have to mean that they
Yeah, right,
turn it off, if they just turn it down for a period of time.
right. They can turn it down for, it's just like, in late April and early May. The skyscrapers occasionally turn their lights off so the birds don't go smacking into it.
Right.
Same thing could happen here, which is for a set of 10 or 15 evenings, please keep your lights down. And for those
The
evenings.
outdoor life,
These are the outdoor up tree,
right,
big clean lights that,
yeah.
cover your
Why
drive.
do they have to do?
They're against town code as it is. It's the town code explicitly says they're not allowed.
Well, that's something that we should
Yeah.
be aware of.
That's an Instagram.
It is.
There's a great message there. Yeah, I personally have converted all my outdoor lights are now,
Turn that.
all yellow, low voltage yellow light. You can see anything. You
Yeah.
Plenty of visibility, it
Right.
just doesn't have insects flying around in circles.
It's also, it's the developers, it's every new development and renovation. And I think this is like a planning and zoning coordination.
Yeah, the people that built the house next door to us, they took down every mature tree they possibly could. Then they planted all these, what I call them twigs and straight lines, and then they put lights under each one of them.
Yeah, that's what I like, a bouquet.
Like Disney Road.
So that's always going to be one of our challenges, is that if you live here long enough, it's the beauty of the big trees and nature
Yes.
that attract you. But if you're moving here, it's trying to, how do I keep it as sterile and less buggy and things like that?
Yeah.
Which is, I'm always like smacking my head when I see these trucks, insect and tick spray kind of operations, which is like, is it just ticks or is it just anything
Yeah.
that gets hit,
Anything.
right? And
Yeah.
tell me, so maybe that's
Why do you
why
think
there are
we
fewer
don't have
birds.
any butterflies?
Yeah, no butterflies, no birds. And well, same thing, which is if you spray chemicals on your lawn, you'll have no fireflies, because nothing lives. They live, the larvae live in the soil level, and then,
But they buy the memo from the landscaper.
Exactly.
I mean, I've had that happen to me, this is the service we provide, you're gonna have a beautiful lawn, I'm gonna do blah, 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 blah. But you won't have any birds, butterflies, bees, or bugs.
if you kill everything but the grass, you really are gonna have.
It is a package.
We digress,
Yeah.
Anyway, I'd like.
So I just have one more.
Should we
question about the
stop
budget.
this? Do we?
Yeah, well, let me officially,
Well, for the budget, we spent on river testing and the nutrient testings from the high school, 7,500
Ah,
this year.
right.
So, should we for next year?
I will see whether we can adjust that. Now, this is just the estimate,
Right,
so it'll move up and down, but I think 7,500. Thank you for that. So without any further ado, I'd like to call a meeting to a close.
I move that we adjourn.
It is 7:45. Thank you all. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day and evening and week.
Now,
You know that Firefly Meadow that the land trust has is absolutely perilous
Oh, trying to get up there.
and out.